Check, check. The perennial problems persist. All right, well, now we are good. So let's get started. Here's what we've got. We've actually got a new project we're working on here. So this is a home which is being coordinated with the VCAP, Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, for a $14,000 reimbursement for conservation landscaping and a rain garden. So the rain garden is what we're going to be focusing on right now. So this is the site, and this extends a bit past the third of an acre property. So what is the water flow like? This is a question we must ask. So in order to ascertain that first, we can look at a couple different things. We can look at the topography, we can look at the contours, we can look at the property itself. Now, we've got the different right, this is what the property looks like flat. You can see a fair bit of elevation as it goes down. And then we've got the contours. I've already made them. Normally I show the process, but I did this before I started recording. So we can then hide the site. And this is what they look like. So right now, they are all in line with the actual property. This is a 1 foot width in each contour line. So when you look at water flow, you want to look at the spots that are most closely together, or this is the slope. These lines are a bit closer. That means the slope is a bit more gradual here. Now, one thing we have to do is actually import the property lines and then cut off the stuff, or to show the boundary, but we already have that in another part of the project. So this right here, this is actually, I'm going to add a new tag to separate this. So this is what I had my employees do. So they created the CAD along with the adjacent property, because we're also doing that property as well. So we've got to line this up with the property. So I need to hide the contours and the elevated site. Right. Then we'll hide the contours, and now we can line this up. So what we'll do is put this right on the house, and the satellite is a bit distorted. It's never perfect. So we want to try to get it as close as possible, but we have to recognize that it's not to scale, whereas this drawing itself actually is. So given the nature of the distortion, this is as close as we can get. It looks like the drawing's off, but it's not. So that's just something we have to work with in the parameters of the imaging software we have as we tether it, because the good thing about this program is that when you include the satellite imagery, you have an option to import the topography, which is extremely efficient. Also, it synchronizes with the real-time shadows and sun path, so you can get an idea of what that's going to look like when you have the property. So what we're going to do next is actually create another layer. Oh, what? uh, wow. I'm not sure what just happened. That's abnormal. Wow. um, it's awkward. Literally everything just disappeared. That's crazy. All right, I'm just gonna fix this real quick. That is just so typical. All right, give me a moment. I'll fix this. That is absolutely ridiculous. It's always whenever I'm streaming that something has to just get completely mixed up. It's so um, bizarre, but whatever. All right, nevertheless, we are back and it did not cost us too much time. I really think this program has a lot of issues, and it's quite vexing because it is used by a lot of industry professionals, but somehow or another, whenever I use it, I have these completely inexplicable issues that force a needless difficulty. In any event, I really don't want to complain because I'd rather focus on the design here. So then we've got this to put in. And then we're going to start doing a 3D model and generating the rain garden itself. So again, we've got that in. It accounts for the distortion. This is what we've got. So now what we're going to do is hop into this and place lines over the CAD. Now this is going to allow us to create the structure for the house. Like you hit Command Z or Control Z and it deletes multiple things. It's just so nonsensical. Anyway, we'll do 20 feet for now. We're not really concerned with the actual representation of the house, right? This is not the primary, excuse me, facet, whereas the that really doesn't make any sense. Again, the primary concern is what is going to be done right here, because we've got space where the rain garden's going. So now I can delete that and then I can create new geometry. In this program, one thing you always want to do is actually have a system of grouping so that you don't join the geometry, which is, needless to say, extremely inconvenient. So we can do that, and then we're going to offset this by about 2 inches. We're going to be putting in a container here for the purpose of presenting a rain garden, and then this will actually have an outflow, excuse me, an overflow, which is going to do 2 things. One, it's going to feed into the arroyo that's right here. So there's actually a dry stream bed, and I should put some pictures in this actually to import, but I don't have that set up at the moment. But then the overflow initially is going to spill on, this is the western side. This is going to spill over here and then go over here towards a shade garden that's close to the house, but it will be able to handle that. We're going to choose plants that are not going to be problematic. But what we've been able to calculate is that this section of the roof, which is actually going to accumulate water here, it's going to be to the tune of less than like a couple thousand gallons a year. So it's not a huge concern, especially when you split that over a multitude of rain events. So we can handle this. This is not something I would necessarily do all the time, but it's a small portion of the roof, and the house itself, the roof square footage is only about 1,200 square feet. So what we'll do is put in some new geometry here. There's actually a protrusion on the house here, so we have to be mindful of that, but we'll incorporate that into the slope. We'll frame this along the house. Now let's group that real quick before we create another problem. I had to create a keybind to make groups in this app, which is just so crazy to me. Like when you consider how integral of a feature that is, just like any software you use, you have to make groups, right? So this will be an area that we actually begin to put plants and then some mulch and whatnot, and we'll have an output right here. So there will be an overflow. So there will be a sort of tank in here, and then that'll be disguised, and then we'll put some plants in there to make it kind of cute. So if that doesn't make sense, let me try to illustrate it now. So if we go into the interior, we'll offset this by another 2 inches, and then we will raise this, making it again its own group, raising it to about there. Actually, I'm gonna redo that offset. I think it'd be better to do about a ½ inch, just so it masks a little better. Right? Boom, we're there. So what this is going to do is allow us to mask the catchment system, which will then put the extra water over here. So what we want is to create essentially like almost a hydroponic garden. So we're going to put in plants here, and they will be high water plants. They'll suck up a lot of water. They'll keep it here. But there's going to be an overflow here, which will feed the arroyo, and there will be another one here. This one will be slightly higher because we're not going to need quite as much water for this section. But the arroyo will take a lot because it will feed this section down here. Right, so when we look at this, we need to put in a couple plants. So we'll say plants, and then you always want to designate things by different layers as well. So, right, we'll put in things like hostas and hydrangeas and other shade tolerant. Well, hydrangeas are moderately shade tolerant, but what is going to happen is this area will be getting a lot of afternoon sun. So hostas, we might put in the shadiest spot here. We might also put some other grasses, things like that. So we'll see how that ends up actually developing. We have to, go over the plant palette with the clients and then begin to imagine what they like. So they essentially handed us everything to think about. So as we go through the design, we'll give them plant options, we'll give them different opportunities, things to think about, and then we'll say, what do you guys like? And they'll say, we like what you've designed, or we want to modify this. So, for example, we've already got a plant palette that consists of asters, goldenrods, smooth hydrangeas, downy, serviceberry, goji berries, columnar apple, world milkweed, and so much more, right? A lot of those are going to be going in flower beds in this area up here. So that's something that I have my employees working on, both sketching it out and doing CAD work for that. So then I want to replicate this and give a bit of a slope. So there's actually a very easy way to do that. So if we go up here and create just a gentle little slope, I don't want to raise this too much because we're just trying to represent like a little mound of mulch. The idea is also we're going to create a bit of a slope away from the house. So then what we'll do is hop into the sandbox, which has disappeared. I have to move it in again. And then we're going to create a mesh, and that allows us, of course, it picked up the faces and didn't do such a great job. Let's redo that. It's rather frustrating. So essentially what we want is to create, there we go, a configuration in which we have, it's not letting me delete lines, like the most, okay, so we need to fix this geometry a little bit. This is unfortunately a common issue with SketchUp, right? And you don't always know where the geometry is hiding, so we have to actually view the hidden geometry. Okay. So the issue are these lines down here, but I don't know why this section is like skyrocketing up there. It's the completely classical, nonsensical kind of thing that I've come to expect with this software. And I hate to just keep complaining, I really do, but then this impedes my ability to progress into the next phase. So there's some point right there. And naturally, does it let me delete it? No. Not until I complain about it. And that's the other reason I actually find myself complaining, is because complaints reveal solutions. Only once you have verbalized the complaint. Explain that to me. Explain that to me. But now we've created a mound, right? It's a very simple process. Took a little longer than it should have. But now we can see, okay, so there's a bit of a slope. It's going away. It's going to go down here, right? So what we'll do next is replicate some of these plants. We'll put them in. Now, the best way to actually do that, in my opinion, is to use a different program for rendering, but I'm going to be having my employee do that this time to give her some more hours, and I can focus on some of the application aspects for this for the clients. So this really is completely turnkey for them. And what we want is the 3D warehouse. We're going to drop in a couple representative plants. These are not going to be these specific plants, but they're going to be representative of things that might be there to give an idea and impression, right? If someone sees a plant, some of these models are just so wacky, man. Like I appreciate that someone made it, but it's like, what is that ridiculous thing at the bottom? Yeah. Right. So this is merely an example. I don't know where the stems on these are, but whatever. So, okay, now we have a little bit more personality. So let's put in some irises or some, oh, I realize you can't see the 3D warehouse here, the window I'm looking at, which has the plants. So let's look for example, an iris. Iris germanica. You also want to be mindful of the polygons. The more shapes there are, the harder it is on your computer. For example, these hydrangeas each have about 400. This one has like 12,000, which is kind of absurd, but at the same time, it's like I've got a powerful PC. I built it that way to do things to the tune of 3D renders. And when you have a system like that, whoops, I did not mean to, oh boy. Um, okay, so I accidentally created an array, which means it was supposed to multiply that transposition by 30. I'm very glad it did not actually obey me that time because that would have introduced a lot of lag and not contrary to what I was just talking about my PC in terms of its important to create this kind of render, right? It's doing so many calculations. The CPU needs all these different threads to have these concurrent calculations and decide where the math is going to be represented, and it's just a lot of computation. And I'm not a computer science guy, so it'd be unjust if I attempted to explain it any further, but suffice it to say that when you have a lot of items, whether it's calculations or processes, it's obviously taxing. So we want to get one more plant here. So I would like to use, just as a representation, we'll say hosta. Surely there is a model of the plant. Here we go. We've got plenty. Like somebody actually um, geolocated their plant. It's like, really? Really? There wasn't, 10 million plants to choose from? Um, just, wow. Okay, so this person made the plant perpendicular, which is kind of bizarre. So we can just fix that real quick, no issue. I just told it to do 90 and then it goes to like 120. Like, thanks. Okay, so let's throw in a couple hostas here. Now again, this garden is, it's shade tolerant. It's going to be, relatively high water usage. Hydrangeas actually do drink a ton of water, which makes them a good candidate here. You can also put all three of these plants pretty close to the house with no real concern for the foundation, right? But also, we're going to be sloping this away from the house to mitigate any potential issues so that when this goes to install, that there's no issues with the rain. And there we go. This one I'm going to spin around a little bit because what'll happen is the human eye will notice the repetition and the lack of, should I say, novelty, because when you replicate plants or textures, you'll notice it immediately. And creating rotations and subtle manipulations to the model itself will actually help it look more realistic, right? For example, these hydrangeas are essentially identical in size, orientation, positioning. So the only difference is their actual location within the 3D model. And that is generally something to pay attention to. If this was going to be a final render, yes, absolutely. But if we put on the shadows, there they are, right? Then we can see, okay, here's the morning, then we get to the afternoon. The height of this building is surely off, but it's more illustrative. I'll adjust it, right? So this is actually suggesting that this is going to get virtually no sun, which is not really the case. So I probably should drop this by about 4 feet. just to show you what that actually looks like. So let's do that real quick. And I should have grouped the roof. Oh, what did I just do? See, I should have grouped it. I did this to myself. Something about the geometry there is clearly incorrect, but it's I see. This is what happens when you work with multiple programs. But I've recently hired some people, and we've been figuring out our software flow because we've historically used different programs. So hence the um, importance of a standard design system, because then you have a lot more cohesion and a lot more. So the issue here is that these are actually different widths, or excuse me, lengths. The width of the building itself is different, so right, that makes sense. That's why I imagine we had that diagonal geometry prior. Fortunately, it's not sufficiently problematic. Like, I don't want these live streams to be just me complaining, but you know, sometimes, sometimes I do want to complain. I mean, I spent a lot of time on the software and just the uh, nigh endless issues that arise are just very frustrating because, you know, I want to talk about the rain garden, what we're doing there, and then all of a sudden I have to go through this simple but egregious issue, right? And it's like now it's not even the focus of what's going on. This is simply an ancillary component. I mean, that, like the house is obviously important, but we're here to do the design, not the house. We're not doing the architecture. So we've got the plants in, we've got this representative of a planner. Let's go ahead and um, put in a couple materials just to give this a little bit of life. So I don't like that in the, oh, we need to create a scene. I don't like that in the latest update of SketchUp, they changed the materials and they created these solid colors and then PBR. I forget what that stands for, but it's essentially a visual tactic which enables the patterns to look more realistic. It is vexing. Now, usually what I do is I use base colors as a template to transition it to when I go to the house, excuse me, the rendering software. So I'm gonna do something akin to that right now. Obviously the house is not actually pink, but oh, this color is so much more muted on the representation here, and then you use it and it's actually like jarring. Like, whoa, what happened? But whatever. For the moment, this will help get us there. And they removed a lot of great textures they had before, you know, like where's the grass now? Like it it doesn't even make sense. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about this in a minute. I'm just going to put in a couple more. Okay, now we've represented mulch. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the flagstone here because it'd be really tedious to do that, and that's not. Come on, bruh. It's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's just the accumulation of these little things that don't make any sense and then just serve as minor vexations and inconveniences. Like, can we just create? I also am not loving how SketchUp has this newer thing where it will actually hide the other material, so it's like I can't see what I'm referencing now. Why is this? Like, it makes no sense. All right, so this is going to represent the flagstone area, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a freehand trace. This is going to be a little bit ridiculous because it's not. I'm actually going to set up a keybind for the freehand because it'd be rather annoying to not have that as an immediate option. So we'll do like Shift E. I click open the preferences window and it doesn't do that. I have to click it twice. Like, what? Okay, so now, there we go. Now I have a quick keybind that I can easily edit. Okay, so we'll represent the existing flagstone here that we're probably going to maintain, but just clean up a lot. Now, this is the kind of thing you could spend way too much time doing, so I'm going to be somewhat efficient with it. Also, like, those are a bit small, so we got to make these a bit bigger. I will circle back to that rain garden in a second here. I just want to represent some flagstone. Actually, matter of fact, there's a slightly better way to do this. So So this is a flagstone pattern that I found online or from the 3D workshop, and it's not perfect. It's really not, but it will get the point across. And if we actually skew it, flagstone is a great time to use the um, scale and the skew because it doesn't really matter. Like, you can move it around and it's not going to be too different. Like, if you were to do this on something architectural, then it would be extremely noticeable that you were manipulating it in such a way, right? So we need a little bit more coverage here. So let's go ahead and grab this one. Whoever made this, like, such a good intention, but they should have grouped each of these individually because there's a real awkwardness to like modifying this. But nevertheless, it will suffice. And if we drop that in here, it's relatively indistinguishable from the rest of the rocks. And then if we skew it, boom, it's now a different shape than this. So you really don't even necessarily notice that, but just to fill out this gap here a little bit more, let's go ahead and pull this out. Okay, now in real life, there's not going to be this much of a gap between the flagstone, which is ideal, but when we repurpose this flagstone, we're probably going to be putting in things such as creeping thyme or Corsican mint or another low-lying creeping plant, which will gradually fill in this space and also create lower maintenance. So let's go ahead and put some grass here. And this is the thing I'm talking about. They removed it. So we have to use an ugly placeholder. And for this, we will use okay. Now, there's no way on SketchUp itself to actually like manipulate the differentiation of the texture, so it's rather frustrating. So I am going to hop into my rendering program here in a moment. But we're going to put in a table and chairs here first, just to represent that people are actually using this space. So one thing that is now a bit of a trend in the landscaping industry is actually they're called cottage gardens and cottagecore specifically, because what happens is what actually happens is people have decided they like these native plants, these clumps of flowers, for example, echinacea or milkweed or even black-eyed Susan, another one of my favorites. People have decided these plants look great in clumps, and number one, they're low maintenance once they've established, especially after the sleep, creep, leap sequence, which enables the plants to really retain a hold. But also, it's beautiful, it's sustainable. There are a ton of ways to get credits, reimbursements, grants, free seeds, and it's a much more noble intention for the ground. And what I always advocate towards my clients is whatever the most bulletproof, long-term, resilient, beautiful, economically sensible option is, that's what we should do. And I never assume anyone is going to be completely absent or derelict in any sort of maintenance, but it's better to plan from that point of view because if things go untended, the amount of distress or disturbance is minimized. Now, obviously, there's an inevitable accumulation of vegetation if somebody doesn't touch an area and it just grows wild. But if you plant the different layers of a natural ecosystem, so things in the ground, things at the ground cover level, small shrubs, larger shrubs, subcanopy, and canopy trees, then there's less room for other plants to enter and infiltrate whatever you're trying to preserve or maintain. So that is called a guild, it's called permaculture, it's called resiliency and designing with intention rather than just putting in a couple plants like, five boxwoods and calling it a day because that's just sloppy and it's incomprehensive. And it's also not the best way to build property value over duration, especially because boxwoods invariably have dead spots or issues and they're so slow to recuperate. And if you have a hedge of plants, you want to invest in something that's going to be healthy and then builds in tandem with other plants, not a plant that you are depending on because it's concurrent with with grass, and then you're constantly spraying it with herbicides that kill clover and can damage other plants too. It's absolute friendly fire. So let me add a new. Okay, so now we can see twin motion, but why is there? Sorry about that. There's an issue with this program. Okay, well, it's also not updating. That's quite bizarre. That's unfortunate. There seems to be an issue in which it won't let me broadcast, won't let me broadcast the render software. So I'm going to have to come back to that. That's rather unfortunate. So well, first off, let's save. It's always a good habit to save frequently. But let's put in a couple more plants in this actual, excuse me. Um, we want like a fescue or a taller grass. Let's see if there's switchgrass. This is not actually what would go in there. It'll just be representative. Hmm. Okay, no really suitable options there. Okay, so we might have something that'll suffice here. So let's drop this in. sometimes these people have the origin messed up, which means where the object is in relation to what you're trying to do, and it's just like, oh, okay, so it's just invisible then. All right, so we don't need all this. We only want something like this. So and of course we still want to give it a bit of personality, and still make it, look like this is sorry, part of the reality of being a business owner is just the constant influx of messages, some scams, some employees, some uh, other nonsense, but it's constant management. I don't have the structure or inherent delegation that you'd find in a team or more corporate setting. And when I used to work in the corporate world, it was not, in my opinion, conducive to what I wanted to do or how I wanted to go about things, right? There's a certain immediacy which I can employ that many other institutions do not enable. And it's anti-bureaucratic, not in the merit, but in the efficiency. Um, so let's do a small shrub to just cover that space. So let's do like an herb. We can do like lettuce. No, let's do Swiss chard, because I think it would be no Swiss chard available. It's a good opportunity to have a little extra food option, right? I try to incorporate that when possible. Oh, I think this actually served my purpose as well. There we are. Right? The more functions you can stack within one space, the more utility and value you get out of it. So, okay. Right now we've got something that feels a little more fleshed out, feels a little more realistic. Wow, that's so weird. Why is it that when you... Okay. right? So we're beginning to hit the point where there are a little too many polygons, and we're actually going to have to chill out with that because SketchUp has a limited capacity to tolerate, all this geometry because everything is constantly rendered at all times. So you don't really have the option to look elsewhere in the visualization and then lighten the resources. So I'm not sure where that random rectangle came from. I don't think that was there a minute ago. But what we've got, right, are all these plants that'll have to be. Like now we're getting lag, which is very frustrating because it shouldn't be this bad. So I don't know why everything is getting synchronized to this. Oh my God. Okay. Oh my God, dude. All right, so now we've got something that represents what we're going to be putting in a little bit more. So let's go ahead and get the shadows over here. So this area actually does get sun. So something in this is slightly distorted, which is rather frustrating, but whatever. So let's go ahead and we're actually going to take a screenshot of this. And put this into the design document in the application. Okay, so I know that may have been a bit hard to follow through some of the design, but let me walk you through so we have a better recap. So firstly, we have existing flagstone here, which is currently covering a pipe that drains to an arroyo here. So this arroyo was done hastily to help try and sell the house and done more for aesthetics than actual drainage, which is unfortunate and ironic because arroyos are actually is a Spanish word for creek or stream. Arroyo seco, which is a common design phenomenon in the Southwest, it means dry stream, but it holds and conveys water when there is some. So we're going to, one, amend that, and two, create a system where the gutters that go here feed that, but the gutter that's here only has maybe 800 square feet of roof allocated to it. It's a very It's a quarter of an already small roof. So actually 800 is well over what the reality of the space is. So it drains down here and then it will enter into this first. It will fill this up. This is going to be essentially a hydroponic tank. So there will be two containers. There will be an exterior container and an interior. In between those two, there will be space for water to accumulate. Then at the bottom of the interior container, there will be holes, and that will allow water to enter that container and then fill it up. Alternatively, we could do it in another way in which the gutter fills up that container first, and then the excess water comes up through the exterior container, and then the overflow will initially go to the arroyo, but just above that, there will be an output here. So there will be a surplus on this side to feed this garden, but we don't want the majority of the water going here because it's close to the house. So that's why the output that will go to the arroyo will be situated about, this is about 3 feet high. So we'll put the output at just about 2.5 feet, and then we'll put the output for that rain garden on the right just a bit higher, maybe about 2 feet and 8 inches, just so there's an offset. And if there is a ton of water, then it will actually go over there without serving or potentially exacerbating existing conditions at that point. So this rain garden is then going to look at, so if we zoom around, I know you can't see anything because we haven't done the modeling for it yet, but I don't know how we just teleported, but in any event, you can see it here. So the arroyo follows this path here. I know it's a bit difficult to see now that the terrain kicked on, so I'll slightly move this around so it remains visible for the moment. But what's happening is there's a stone wall here and this narrow path, and this is the actual measurement of it. And then there's an arroyo here that transports the water, but we're going to be modifying it. The arroyo is actually this one right here. So this is the stone wall, and we're going to be modifying it so it'll take a lot more water, and then we'll put a secondary rain garden over here. So I'm going to have my employees sketch that out to illustrate it, because that is something that I can more easily delegate than explain the design of this. But I hope I have explained it in a way that makes sense. We're going to be working on this design over the next month, and then the installation window will be in October, because that's how the bureaucracy of this particular program works. So there will be a lot more updates on this, especially as we get through the design and the plant palette. But I'm very excited for this installation, because this will be a pretty good project for these homeowners to, one, get a lot more utility out of their land, and then two, a lot more beauty. So I have to make some calls now, but I appreciate you for watching. Thank you for sticking around and enduring my technological tirades, of which I hope there are far fewer in the future, as I hopefully encounter a streak of luck that does not exacerbate the technological problems that seem inevitable and continuous. So, again, thank you very much for watching. This has been Dane of Eden and Dane, and we've been working on this rain garden for a property in Virginia. Thank you very much. Have a great day.